As a director, it is crucially important to prep each scene before you arrive on set. In this episode, I'm going to do a quick scene study of a dramatic scene that I directed recently and walk you through the entire process that I use to block and prepare for this scene. Early in my career, there were moments where I didn't really have anything in mind as far as what I was looking for in a specific scene. I just kind of figured I would arrive on set, I'd read through the scene when I read through it with the cast, and as we're figuring out the blocking, I would just kind of make it up as we went. That is an assumption that many filmmakers make. It is a bad assumption, it is not the way to do it, and it does not usually end well. Many inexperienced filmmakers have the same really bad assumption that scenes practically film themselves. They don't. Prep is extremely important. Read the script through as many times as you possibly can. Anytime you have an extra minute, read the script again. You can never read the script too many times. You can never read a scene too many times. It is very important to know exactly what's in the script, what's in the scene, and what you're planning to do for that scene. You may have heard the phrase fix it in post, and it's a common joke among the film industry, but the reality is many experienced feature and TV directors will often say what's more important is fix it in prep. What that means is having a very, very thorough plan for your scene, even editing the entire scene in your mind and on paper before you even shoot it. Before you arrive on set, you should already have a shot list in mind and written down. You should have already shared that shot list with your AD and your DP. They should know exactly what shots you plan on getting and roughly how you plan on blocking the scene before any of you even arrive on set. And the three of you, along with any other crucial individuals involved, should have already discussed how you're going to accomplish that before the day. To be clear, when we talk about scene prep, we're not just talking about the props and the set dressing, the art direction. All of that stuff is important. All that stuff is stuff that you should have made decisions regarding or signed off on at some point prior to arriving on set anyway, so that that is prepared and ready for you to film with as well. But as a director, you should also be mentally and practically and emotionally preparing yourself for this scene. You should be blocking it out in your mind. You should be drawing overheads or storyboards or whatever works for you, whatever you need to know and do in order to fully wrap your mind around the scene and be prepared to have an idea of exactly what you need in order to tell the story that you want to tell. The worst thing you can do is walk into the set unprepared and just start shooting a bunch of random angles that you don't even really need, that you'll never even use, just simply because you really don't know what you want or what you need to tell the story. It's so crucially important to have that idea ahead of time before arriving on set. So today we're going to do a short scene study of a particular scene that I recently directed. I'm going to show you the entire process that I went through as far as how I mentally prepared for that scene and how I wrapped my mind around the scene, what notes I took and everything that I did in order to get ready for that scene so that it made the process of the actual on-set experience so much smoother and ended in a much better end result. I hope that through this scene study you will gain some ideas that will work for you and just have a better understanding of what it takes to fully prepare for a scene so that you can walk into your scenes being better prepared and knowing exactly what you need, what you want to tell the story. This is a scene from No Internet, which I call the chess scene. If you have not seen No Internet yet, I would highly recommend going and watching No Internet first before watching this scene study, because there are definitely some spoilers in this episode that will give away some really key elements of the story. Throughout No Internet, James, a spunky 13-year-old gamer kid, has been yearning for this closeness and amazing friendship with his older brother that they once had a few years ago before moving to a new town. Since moving to this new town, their friendship has kind of fallen apart. It isn't what it used to be, and James really longs for that closeness that they once had, and he feels like his role model hates him. So take a quick look at the script for the scene. I'll just summarize the beats for you. Zach enters James's room and tries to apologize for the events of the earlier scene. It's not fine, but James says it's fine. Zach realizes that James isn't really in the mood to talk. He leaves in defeat, also realizing that the friendship they once had is no more. Zach comes back into the room. They have a really nice heart-to-heart moment, and then Zach takes this opportunity with their renewed friendship to give James a little bit of advice on how to play chess. The prep. My prep for this scene was pretty in-depth. For starters, I knew I needed a shot list. I knew I was going to have very limited time to get this scene and to get everything I needed, and I also knew that I had to get it just right. It was a very emotional scene and a very key turning point in the story. In addition to creating a shot list, I was also doing overhead diagrams of camera placement, blocking for the cast. I was writing out the shots in my script. I was even editing the shots in my script, putting little numbers next to each shot, and then putting numbers next to each line in the script as kind of envisioning on paper what shot I would be cutting to for each line. In addition to all of that, with the shot prep and everything else, I was also mentally preparing for each actor's line, creating kind of a reason for why they said each line. I would write a little note next to each and every line that the actor said. That note would kind of help me to get the actor in the right moment for that specific line, and for each specific line, if there was any moment where the actor was struggling or any moment where the actor needed clarification, I already had those notes written out line by line in my script so that the actors could know exactly what moment they should be in. In addition to all this prep that I went through for the script and for the scene itself, myself and the two actors also got together a couple weeks beforehand to specifically rehearse this scene multiple times and to really discuss this scene and get both of the actors into the right place and the right mindset for this scene so that they could hopefully draw from that as we were shooting the scene in reality. I knew that it was important to use body language for this as well because there was a lot of emotion that I wanted to convey, a lot of feeling of what the actors were going through internally, and it's really cheesy obviously to have them say how they're feeling, and so it was really important to figure out ways to use the body language and how they interacted with each other kind of visually to tell that story of what was going on. There were a few things that I had to consider as I was going through preparing for this scene. First of all, James had to be playing chess. That was definitely a no-brainer. It was a very pivotal piece of the scene, important to the context of the scene. And so as I started thinking about how James would be playing chess, there were a couple options that came to mind, like where would he be playing chess? How would he be sitting? Either he was sitting at his desk playing chess, but that felt really stiff, really uncomfortable, not very natural. Or the more likely option, which seemed to make more sense to me, was James was, a typical 13-year-old. He was laying across his bed, playing chess on his bed. That seemed much more relaxed, seemed a lot more natural for a 13-year-old to be doing. So that's what I ended up going with, and then worked my entire scene around there. It was important to me that James was laying on the bed, playing chess, and then I wanted Zach to come in and enter the room at some point whenever the conversation drew him in. And I really wanted Zach to sit on the edge of the bed facing outward, facing toward the door that he came in the room, and leaving James behind him. I wanted this to really be a nice opportunity to, first of all, just create some nice visual shots, give us some moments, some nice two shots, and give us some moments where Zach could turn around and look to James, and we have a couple nice look backs, but also give us, those moments of like the audience not really knowing if Zach is fully committed to, this friendship that he has with his brother. So as I was preparing for this scene, writing out all the different shots, doing the overheads in my mind, there were really complicated overheads and really complicated little storyboards that I had. And the storyboards that I do are very, very, very simple. There's nothing fancy or cool about them. They're really like stick figures and just giving us an idea of placement of people and what the shot size is supposed to be. So it's like really, really simple. Anyone can storyboard. I can't in any way draw. I'm not that form of artistic. But as far as drawing out a storyboard, it is still a very helpful thing to do, and it helps you to visualize, helps your crew to visualize what you're wanting to accomplish. So because my overheads, my storyboards were getting a bit complicated, and I had a lot of very specific blocking that I wanted to try to do in order to nail certain elements of this emotion, I ended up deciding to do a previs for this scene. This was only a couple days before we shot the scene. I was pretty busy with all the other prep that goes into creating a project like this, and so I had a lot of other things going on. I had very little time. It was kind of a last minute thing that like at 7:30 p.m. A couple days before we filmed, I decided I was going to previs this scene. So I grabbed my DSLR, I grabbed the quickest thing that I could find that could represent two actors, a couple large nutcrackers, and I set up the scene on my kitchen floor, used some makeshift set dressing. I think I used like a cereal box or something to represent the bed. I don't even remember. Regardless, it was really awkward trying to shoot this scene with nutcrackers that don't bend and making it look like they were sitting down. But I shot this previs. I knew that not very many people would ever see this previs, even though now I'm showing this previs to the world. But regardless, the point is I just needed some way to pre-visualize this scene. I didn't have any resources at all available to me at the moment. I had a camera, I had nutcrackers, I had a kitchen floor, I had some cereal boxes or whatever I used. That's all it takes to previs, to wrap your mind around it. Use a little bit of imagination, but it helps you to figure out what shots you need, what shots are gonna work, what shots are not gonna work, what shots you might be missing once you edit it all together and you realize, hey, I really need that shot. It's so much better to discover that with a couple nutcrackers on your kitchen floor than to discover that, spending how many thousands or millions of dollars in a single day of shooting and realizing later that you missed a shot that you should have thought about ahead of time. A few days later, we're on set. I pull up my notes, I pull up my previs. I know exactly what I want to do, but before I share any of that with the cast, I always like to start my scenes with just kind of a read through the lines. Let's just read the lines, get our minds wrapped around the scene in the right place before we talk about blocking, and then we'll go through, talk about the blocking, get everything working, and then I'll kind of share what my ideas were for the blocking, and I'll see what the actors had ideas, if they had any ideas, and it's really important to give them that ability to at least contribute to the creative process as well. And so I bring the actors in, and I did tell Miles, who plays James, that I wanted him laying on the bed playing chess, so I had him get in that position, but I didn't give him or Hunter, who plays Zach, any other notes, and I just kind of had them read the lines. So I called action. Hunter actually walked through the scene. He walked in from the door to the bed. He leaned down, completely contrary to what I was envisioning for this scene. He leaned down, had this really nice just facing James moment and conversation. Even while watching them rehearse the scene, it was actually really moving and really touching. And I really was just standing there watching from the profile. I really, really liked how they delivered it and how they walked through it. And it came across very naturally and didn't require any input from me. So this time I asked them to rehearse it one more time, and I asked them to do everything the exact same that they had done previously. And the DP and I just kind of walked around the room and watched from different angles as they went through this scene. And I realized that this was so much better than what I had originally envisioned or planned for this scene. Not only did I realize that it was a much better and more natural feeling blocking that really came across in a really moving way, but if we shot it this way, we also saved 3 setups. We'd only have 7 setups instead of 10. So we ended up going with this. I knew what my basic components that I needed were. I needed a wide shot, I definitely wanted a 2-shot in there, and I needed some close-ups and coverage on both of them. I also had a very specific shot that I wanted at the end, is I definitely wanted to have a nice 2-shot that pulled back into a really nice wide of them playing chess and just this really nice closing moment of the 2 brothers kind of rebonding again. So I knew that there were a few basic components I wanted, but aside from that, I threw out my entire shot list, threw out all my notes, threw out my previs, and decided we're gonna go with exactly what we just saw unfold naturally with these 2 actors. So here's the final result of that scene. Enjoy.
Hey.
So you took my chessboard.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Checkers is pretty boring, now that I've mastered it.
Yeah, chess might be a bit more difficult to master. Last night, when you said you knew I wouldn't help you, it made me realize I haven't been a good big brother.
That's fine.
Okay.
You used to be. I just thought maybe didn't want to be around anyone younger since you were getting older. But my friends are the same age as me, and you're always so much nicer to them. I always looked up to you, and when we moved, it's when I needed my big brother the most. It's when you stopped caring.
never stopped caring.
Felt like you did.
James, I'm sorry. You know, with everything that happened with Dad, I don't know why I treat you differently. But I just figured that we'd always be there for each other. You know, friends come and go, but we're brothers.
Do you mean that? Always be there for each other?
Yes, I do. I realize that now, and I'm sorry. You're my little brother. You're always gonna be amazing.
Thanks.
Now, do you need help with this game?
Yes, please. This doesn't make any sense to me. Caitlin challenged me to a game tomorrow.
Oh, our dad's really good.
Yeah. She's probably gonna destroy me.
Okay, well, these are pawns, and they can move 2 spaces on their first turn, but only 1 space after that, unless they're attacking.
Well, yeah, I know that much, but what about these ones, the horses? How do they move?
Okay, these are knights, and they can move in L shapes, 2 spaces one way, 1 space the other way.
Huh, that's weird. Never seen a horse move like that.
The summary. Even though I did end up going a completely different route from what I had prepared for and planned, there were a few reasons why I definitely did want to include this as a scene study. First of all, I really wanted you to just simply understand the process, the amount of time and work and effort that goes into preparing for even a basic dramatic scene. There were no stunts, no special effects, no visual effects, nothing crazy, complicated, or out of the ordinary. It was 2 actors sitting on a bed having a conversation. But I still wanted you to see how much time and effort goes into planning and preparing for even the most basic dramatic scenes, especially one that is so pivotal to the story. Secondly, I wanted you to see the importance of having a plan and going through that process to make sure you're walking onto set fully prepared for what you're wanting to do and what you need to do for that scene. The ideal situation is having a plan in place, having a backup plan, having a backup to the backup, having a few other backup plans just in case something goes wrong, that you can whip any of those backup plans out of your pocket. But if you're on set and you just have this moment of creativity and you throw out all your plans and go that route, that's totally fine as long as it's within the realm of possibility with what your current limitations are. But it is still very important to always have a plan and a couple backup plans in place just in case you don't have that moment of creativity on set, so that you at least know what you're going to do and don't have to waste time figuring it out. And the third reason for using this scene as a scene study was I wanted to really demonstrate to you how preparing for a scene can help you to make sure that you're getting the best shot you can possibly get. I do not in any way count any of the time that I spent preparing or pre-visiting this scene to be a waste, because I spent so much time thinking through all sorts of different options. At the moment when I was pre-visiting the scene, I felt like I had come to a point where I thought this was the best route to go for this scene. I had exhausted a few other options in my mind, thought through other options, and so I knew that I was kind of getting what I thought was the best. And then when I saw a different option that I hadn't thought about unfold on set just naturally between the 2 actors, I realized that I now had a choice. I could choose between what I had gone through already, choosing the best option, or what I just saw unfold. And by making that choice, by having spent the time preparing for the scene ahead of time and already thinking through lots of different options, I now knew without a doubt that choosing the option that I saw unfold with the cast was the best possible option for this scene. It was going to tell the story in the best way possible. If I hadn't fully prepped the scene, I really couldn't have said without a doubt that the way we went was the best possible option, because I wouldn't have already exhausted all the other possibilities in my mind. So even if you are going to throw out your entire plan, your entire shot list, go a completely different route on set, having already done the work to prepare the scene gives you the ability to know without a doubt that the option or the choice that you're making is the best for the scene. Another key takeaway that I hope that you get out of this scene study is, even though I completely threw out my entire shot list and plan for this scene and we went in a completely different route with the blocking, I still had a very particular shot that I wanted to close the scene on, and I still went that route. The importance of that is that particular shot does require a little bit of prep work, and my DP and my entire grip and lighting team needed to know a few things about that shot, and so knowing that ahead of time helped them to go into it much more prepared, and it helped us to achieve that shot much quicker. Also, knowing that I definitely wanted to end that scene on that shot ahead of time meant that as we were filming the other shots, especially now that we were kind of creating a new shot list based on the new blocking, we were able to keep that in mind, knowing that at the end of the scene, at a certain point, we had to get our camera to the other side of the line, because the only way that that shot would work would be to shoot it from the wrong side of the line from where we shot the rest of the scene. And so by knowing ahead of time what I needed for the ending to work, I also was able to incorporate that into the other shots. So if you watch here in this particular moment of this scene, we're on the same side of the line for the entire scene, and then at this moment we use a very small slide to cross over to the other side of the line, using Zach's movement and motion to give the camera motivation to move, and that gives us a natural point where we cross the line onto the other side of the line, so that now it's not a weird cut when we cut to this closing shot to see the two brothers sitting there playing chess as we pull away, now looking into the room, where all of the rest of the scene we were kind of looking more out of the room. I hope that this has been useful to you, whether you are a director or an aspiring director, whether you're working on a small indie project or a high budget TV series. I hope that at least sharing my process for going about preparing for a scene has given you a little bit of maybe some ideas or some insights. Hopefully this has maybe even encouraged you or challenged you to be better prepared for each scene before you walk onto set. I may do a couple more scene studies like this in the future. I'm still a little bit undecided about that. So if you enjoyed this scene study, or if you would like to see more scene studies, please feel free to comment below. Let me know what you think, what your thoughts are on this format, this process, or if there's any specific scenes from anything that I've directed that you would like to see me do a scene study on. Let me know in the comments of this video. I would love to hear from you. I definitely read every comment that I receive. I reply to as many as I can, or as many as make sense. I don't really reply to some of the trolls out there, or just reply with like a lol or something. So let me know what you think. If you want to see more scene studies, let me know below. If you liked what you saw, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Come back next week for more content. Thanks for watching.